Welcome back. If you're new here, this channel is about stories. Not just any stories, stories of real people, real events, real consequences. Stories that make you stop scrolling, sit up straight, and think, wait, that actually happened? Today's story is one of those. It's about a man who was born with nothing, who built everything, who lost it, who escaped, who built it again, who escaped again, and who was finally brought down, not by the FBI, not by the DEA, not by an army of Marines, but by tacos. Stay with me. Imagine you are standing inside a prison cell. 5 feet wide, 6 feet long. Steel walls, concrete ceiling. A steel door with 3 locks. Security cameras in every corner. Every corner except one. A tiny blind spot behind the shower wall, about the size of a school desk. Now imagine that someone, on the outside, already knows exactly where that blind spot is. They've had the blueprints for months. They've been digging toward it, every night, for over a year. Beneath the most secure prison in all of Mexico. On the night of July 11th, 2015, a man walks into that shower stall. He ducks behind the wall, and he is never seen inside that cell again. Not through the door, not through a window, not past a single guard. He went underground. This is the story of Joaquín Archibaldo Guzmán Loera. The world called him El Chapo. And this was not even his first escape. To understand El Chapo, you have to forget the movies. Forget the Netflix show. Forget the famous photos. Forget everything you think you know. Because this story doesn't start with guns and money. It starts with dirt. A tiny village deep in the mountains of Sinaloa, Mexico. No running water, no nearby school, no future you could see from any direction. His father was a farmer, a poor one. And Joaquín, the boy who would one day become the most powerful drug lord in human history, could not read. Not a single word. The man who ran a multinational criminal empire worth billions of dollars, who outsmarted governments, who built underground railways, who put more narcotics on American streets than anyone in history, was illiterate. Now, does that make you feel sorry for him? It shouldn't. Not entirely. Because millions of people are born into poverty. Millions of people grow up with nothing. They don't become monsters. But Chapo made a choice. And that choice began in the mountains, when, as a teenager, he started working for the Guadalajara cartel. The drug trade in Sinaloa was not unusual. Opium poppies had grown in those mountains for generations. For poor families with no other option, it was just survival. But Chapo was different from the other young men who got involved. He wasn't just ruthless. He was smart. And the specific kind of smart that changes history. The kind that thinks in systems. While other traffickers fought over the same road, the same border crossing, Chapo looked down. And he went underground. Most criminals think in straight lines. Chapo thought in 3 dimensions. He was the first Mexican drug trafficker to hire architects, real architects, mining engineers, ventilation specialists, rail system experts. He didn't just dig holes. He built infrastructure. Think about the border between San Diego, California, and Tijuana, Mexico, one of the busiest commercial crossings in the entire world. Every day, thousands of trucks, containers, cargo, moving legally from one country to the other. What you couldn't see, what nobody could see, was what was happening below the road. Beneath a 4-mile stretch of that border, dozens of tunnels. Not rough, scraped-out holes. Real tunnels, with lighting, ventilation, rail systems, electric carts to move cargo. Some of them were 90 feet underground. 90 feet. That is the height of a 9-story building, straight down. Building one tunnel cost $1 to $2 million. One successful drug shipment through that tunnel was worth $5, $6, sometimes $10 million. The tunnel paid for itself on the first use. Everything after that was pure profit. And it wasn't just tunnels. He packed cocaine inside fake cucumbers, fake bananas, mixed into real produce shipments crossing legally every single day. He used semi-trucks, rail cars, cargo ships, private planes, including Boeing 747s. He used narco-submarines, homemade vessels crawling beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean, carrying tons of drugs at a time. Former U.S. law enforcement officials, people who spent decades chasing cartels, described the Sinaloa cartel under El Chapo as a Fortune 500 company. Logistics, manufacturing, distribution, counterintelligence. This was not a gang. This was a corporation. One whose product destroyed lives. Thousands of people electrocuted, beheaded, dissolved in acid in the war to protect that corporation. The border region became one of the most dangerous places on earth. Ordinary people, people who had nothing to do with drugs, living in the wrong city, on the wrong street. They paid the price that El Chapo never did. Until, eventually, the world decided enough was enough. After Osama bin Laden was killed in 2011, the world's most wanted list had an opening at the top. The spot went to a farmer's son from Sinaloa. The DEA, the FBI, the U.S. Marshals, Homeland Security, all of them, separately, hunting the same man. And that was the problem. When 4 different agencies chase one criminal, they don't share information. They compete. Each one protecting its own intelligence, its own sources, its own leads. The result? Every time they got close, Chapo was already gone. The Americans suspected Mexican officials were tipping him off. The Mexicans were furious at the accusation. The distrust ran so deep that 2 governments, supposedly working together, were practically working against each other. Then someone said, enough. They put every piece of intelligence on one table. American surveillance technology, Mexican boots on the ground, one shared operation. And it started, as big things often do, with something small. A routine wiretap at a border crossing in Nogales, Arizona. One phone, linked to one of Chapo's mid-level people. They pulled the thread, phone to phone, device to device, person to person. For more than 2 years they worked it, until they had a complete map, an invisible diagram of how the entire Sinaloa cartel communicated. And that map was the key. They shared it with the Mexican Marines, not the police, not government officials, the Marines, elite, trained, and, crucially, considered the one part of Mexican law enforcement not yet fully corrupted by Chapo's money. The trap was set. On February 17th, the Marines began moving. Safe houses hid across Culiacan, Chapo's home city on the Pacific coast. 3 tons of crystal meth, cocaine, automatic weapons, a rocket launcher, and 1 diamond-encrusted pistol, engraved with Chapo's initials. He was getting confident, or he was getting careless. They arrested one of his top lieutenants, a man known only as El Nariz, the nose. And the nose talked. He told them exactly where Chapo was hiding. He told them how Chapo planned to escape. He told them everything. The safe house didn't look like a fortress. That was entirely the point. A normal-looking house, middle-class neighborhood. Nothing strange about it from the street. Except the steel door, reinforced, 3 inches thick, and the bathtub. The Marines rammed the front door. It took them 8 minutes to get through. 8 minutes. In those 8 minutes, Chapo, barefoot, in his underwear, with his bodyguard and 2 women, dropped through the floor. Literally. The bathtub sat on a hydraulic lift, like an elevator for a bathtub. Press the mechanism, the tub rises. Beneath it, stairs going down into the earth. Below the stairs, a tunnel, connected to the city's sewer system. Connected to 6 other safe houses across Culiacan. All of them, every single one, equipped with the same hidden bathtub escape hatch. He hadn't bought safe houses. He had built a city beneath the city. A secret underground network stretching beneath the streets of Culiacan. The Marines went in after him. They could hear him, splashing through water ahead of them in the dark. But he had a 10-minute head start. By the time they came out the other end, by the river, El Chapo had vanished. He wasn't alone when he ran. He fled with his wife, a former beauty queen, their twin toddlers, a nanny, a cook, his bodyguard. Running through sewers with babies. This was not unusual for Joaquín Guzmán, but Chapo made one mistake. The mistake every fugitive makes eventually. He needed to talk to people. He ditched his old phones, got new numbers. But to tell his network the new numbers, he had to call someone. 5 days later, American Signals Intelligence traced his bodyguard's phone to a beachfront building in the resort city of Mazatlan, 136 miles away. At exactly 6:40 in the morning on February 22nd, the Marines hit room 401. The bodyguard saw the red dots of laser sights on his chest. He dropped his rifle, put his hands up. Chapo's wife, by the bed, a Marine pushed past her, kicked open the bathroom door. There was someone behind it. El Chapo. Captured without a single shot fired. In Mexico City, the team listening to the operation in real time cheered, high-fived, and then fell completely silent. Because they had expected him to fight to the death. He didn't. He just surrendered. They didn't know whether to be more shocked that he was caught or that he was caught without a single bullet. They sent him to Altiplano, Mexico's most secure prison. Walls 3 feet thick, airspace restricted for miles, cell phones jammed throughout, security cameras in every corner of every room. No one was getting into that prison from the outside. No one had thought about underneath. Almost from the day Guzmán arrived at Altiplano, a construction crew from his own cartel started digging, a mile away from the prison, inside a plain cinder-block building in a farmer's field. They dug down 3 stories below ground. Then what? Then they turned sideways and dug 4,921 feet straight toward the prison, nearly a mile, below the prison walls, below the plumbing, below everything. And they didn't just dig toward the prison. They dug toward one specific room, one specific corner of one specific room, the shower stall of Guzmán's cell, the only spot the cameras couldn't see. How do you dig nearly a mile underground and hit a target the size of a school desk? You can't. Not without blueprints. Not without someone on the inside telling you exactly where the cameras were. Someone gave them the blueprints of that prison. Someone told them where the blind spot was. Someone wanted El Chapo to get out. At 8:52 in the evening on July 11, 2015, Guzmán walked to the back of his shower stall, stepped behind the privacy wall, and climbed down into the tunnel. At the bottom, a motorcycle, mounted on rail tracks, engineered specifically for this tunnel. He rode it nearly a mile in the dark. By the time the guards sounded the alarm, El Chapo was already gone. For the second time. When the head of the DEA heard the news, he said one word: disappointed. Not shocked, because they'd known, for a year before the escape. Chatter in the intelligence network suggested the cartel was planning to break him out again. They just didn't know about the tunnel. The man known as the Tunnel King, who had built more sophisticated tunnels than any other person in the history of drug trafficking, was going to tunnel his way out. And nobody stopped it. Here is something important. After his first prison escape in 2001, Chapo disappeared for 13 years. No photos, no sightings, no parties, no public appearances. He ran his billion-dollar empire from the shadows, through layers of people, through carefully separated communication chains. He was a ghost who left cash at every doorstep. But after the second escape, everything was different. He was spotted at restaurants, at family gatherings, at social events. He invited a famous Hollywood actor and a famous actress to come meet him at a jungle hideaway for a magazine article. The world's most wanted fugitive invited celebrities to interview him for a magazine. Now here is what Chapo did not know. The Mexican Marines were already watching him. They were tracking everyone in his inner circle, his lieutenants, his cook, his security people. And when those communications mentioned that 2 Hollywood visitors were coming to see the boss, the Marines knew. They tracked the actor's arrival. They watched them leave. They waited, because they did not want American celebrities caught in a gunfight. And then they moved on his mountaintop ranch. A team climbed by Jungle Road, A helicopter team dropped in from above. They had him. Except El Chapo ran, with a child in his arms. His own infant. He used his own baby as a shield to reach the jungle. The Marines couldn't fire. He reached the trees. He was gone. One former Justice Department official who studied Chapo for years said something that explains everything. He became drunk on his own success. He started to believe his own legend. He started to believe he was special. He started to believe he was untouchable. And that belief, that single moment of pride, was what finally brought him down. In early December, the wiretaps lit up. Intelligence intercepts began picking up references to Grandma coming to visit. Grandma was a code name for El Chapo. The Marines identified a house in Los Mochis, a quiet coastal town in northern Sinaloa, and they did something they had never done before. They waited for an entire month. Painters came and went. Construction crews worked. Ordinary things happened. But the Marines were watching. They were certain Grandma was coming. On the morning of January 7th, he arrived. The Marine assault team moved into position. That evening, something happened that will be in history books forever. Someone inside the house made a phone call, a food order, a large order of tacos. The most wanted man in the world ordered tacos. An armored truck left the house to go pick them up. At 4:40 in the morning on January 8th, the Marines began battering down the gate. The first Marine through the door was shot in the arm. High-caliber rounds, grenades, blood on the walls. The safe house was a war zone. The Marines moved room by room. 5 cartel members dead, 6 taken prisoner. But Chapo? Gone. Behind a wall of floor-to-ceiling mirrors and a walk-in closet, a hidden door. Behind the door, stairs. Below the stairs, another tunnel, connected to the city's storm drain and sewer network. 45 minutes passed before the Marines found the entrance. 45 minutes. They went in after him, opened manhole covers across the city, sent soldiers into the sewers, and then it started raining. Hard. Within 20 minutes, the tunnels were flooding. Chapo realized he was going to drown. He had no option. At 8:55 in the morning, security cameras at a gas station caught something. A manhole cover on a public street. It lifted. 2 men climbed out, completely soaked. They looked around, and they started moving. Volkswagen Jetta drove 3 blocks. It broke down. They carjacked a red Ford Focus, drove a few miles. That broke down too. Let me just say that again. The man who built underground rail systems beneath international borders, who tunneled out of 2 maximum security prisons, who ran from armies, who bribed presidents, was stranded on the side of a highway in a broken Ford Focus. Even the car wanted nothing to do with him. Federal Emergency Services received reports of 2 carjacked vehicles on the highway outside town. Marines find the car. Marines found the Ford on the back of a tow truck. No sign of Guzmán. He had been picked up by federal police and taken to a motel. Not a police station, a motel. No one officially confirmed why. But one former senior official who spent years studying Chapo offered a theory.
El Chapo, sitting in the back of that police car, made an offer. "Let me go, and I will make you richer than you have ever dreamed. Say no, and I will kill you, and your wife, and your daughters, and your sons." This offer had worked before, dozens of times throughout his career, but the Marines arrived. They recognized what was happening, and this time, the offer didn't work. El Chapo was taken into custody, flown to Mexico City, fingerprinted, photographed, paraded before cameras, and sent back to Altiplano, the same prison he had tunneled out of 6 months earlier. This time they moved him from cell to cell randomly.
Guards rotated every 15 minutes. No guard stayed long enough to learn his schedule. No guard stayed long enough to be bribed. The game changed, had finally changed. In January 2017, Chapo was extradited to the United States. Tried in a federal court in Brooklyn, New York, convicted on all 10 counts, sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years. Where now? He is currently held at ADX Florence, the American Supermax prison. It is the most secure prison in the United States. There are no tunnels here. Not this time. I want to stop here, because a lot of people tell the El Chapo story like it's an action movie, like it's exciting, like he's some kind of genius outlaw to admire. And I want to be very direct with you. He is not. He is a man who chose to build wealth by destroying other people's lives. Thousands of people died because of his cartel. Millions of families were torn apart by addiction to drugs he supplied. Cities were terrorized, journalists were killed, judges were threatened, children grew up in war zones. That is not a movie. That is real. But here is the harder question. Why did it take so long? Because El Chapo didn't just buy people. He bought systems. He paid judges, police chiefs, prison guards, politicians. Laws existed on paper, but Chapo had already purchased the people responsible for enforcing them. Imagine you are playing a video game, and someone has already hacked all the rules. The walls don't stop them. The locks don't work. The referees are on their team. That's what corruption does to a country. And corruption didn't live only in Mexico. American banks processed his money. American demand for drugs funded his operation. American political decisions shaped which drugs were illegal and which enforcement got funding. The problem was never just one man. It was, and is, a broken system that turns poverty into crime and crime into empire. Removing El Chapo was necessary. It sent a message every criminal needed to hear. You are not untouchable. No one is. But the Sinaloa cartel did not collapse when he was arrested. It didn't collapse when he escaped. It didn't collapse when he was convicted. It adapted. It always adapts. Because El Chapo was a symptom, not the disease. I want to talk to you directly now. Whether you are 10 years old watching this with curiosity, or 60 years old watching this to understand the world, the lesson is the same. Of El Chapo's life is not about drugs. It's not about tunnels. It's not about the escapes. It is about what happens when a person starts to believe they are above consequences. If you are young, hear this. Every choice you make builds who you become. The boy from those mountains had no education, no money, no opportunity. But he had a choice between two roads. He chose the road that made him rich and powerful. He also chose the road that ended with him alone in a box of a cell for the rest of his life. No mansion is worth that. No amount of money. If you are older, hear this. The systems we allow to stay corrupt will produce more Chapos. Every unanswered bribe, every unpunished official, every law that only applies to poor people, these are the soil in which monsters grow. El Chapo did not appear from nowhere. He was grown by poverty, by corruption, by a world that turned its back. And the world has to decide if it wants to keep growing them. All right. That was the story of Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán. From a village with no running water, to the Forbes billionaires list, to a diamond-encrusted pistol with his initials, to 2 prison escapes, to a flooded sewer in the middle of the night, to a broken Ford Focus on the side of a highway, to a life sentence in the most secure prison in America. The tunnels are still there, by the way. Some filled with concrete, some still being found. He built an underground world, and the world eventually put him underground for good. Now, if this video made you think, give it a like. Not for me, because it tells the algorithm that real stories, stories with depth, stories that make you stop and think, those stories deserve to be seen. If you are not subscribed yet, hit that button, because every single video on this channel is built the same way. Real research, real stories, no fluff. And drop a comment below. I want to know, what surprised you most about this story? Was it the tunnels? The bathtub escape? The Ford Focus? Or was it the corruption, the system that let this happen for 30 years? I read every comment. Tell me what you think. Thank you for watching. Stay curious, stay honest, and I will see you in the next one.